Our recording, right? Yeah.
Want to just have a chance to have you have you introduce yourself very briefly in case there are others who don't know you. And David, why don't we start with you?
I'm David Axton. My wife Paula is off camera. She's with us. She's a little under the weather. These weather changes are kind of dealing her a bit, but we live in Midtown and discovered the church about a year and a half ago, I guess, and joined, and we love it. And we have so enjoyed the sessions with you, Denny, and I can't tell you how much I've learned, in not only in knowledge, but in understanding. And that's a good thing. So thank you for that.
Well, good to have you here. David, why don't you select somebody else on screen to introduce themselves?
I can only see myself at this point.
Oops.
So I'll pass that to you.
Okay. Perrin, why don't we go with you?
Okay, I'm Perrin Nicholson, and I'm actually one of the facilitators and have enjoyed the journey group. The first thing that I was not a facilitator in, and I'm looking forward to this one.
Great. Susan, how about you? Susan, are you there? Maybe not. Darlene.
Unmute.
You got to unmute, Darlene.
I was trying to, okay. I'm
Okay.
I'm Darlene. I've been at St. Thomas for, ever since 2013. It's been a while now. And I do, and I really have been enjoying the sessions. I always enjoy anything you do, Denny. And it's good to meet some new people too through the journey groups. Yeah.
Very good. Jane.
Last but not least, my husband and I just joined St. Thomas less than a month ago. And we have lived in Columbus. We live in Cocoa Lake, actually, but we've lived in this area now since December of '95. We came here from Germany, where we've been working for the Army, and I had a job at Fort Benning, and we were not planning to stay in the South. We were going to move back to the Northwest, my home state of Oregon. But we didn't. So we're still here. And we had been members of Midland Methodist the entire time we've been here, but we were just kind of looking for something different. So here we are. And we're looking forward to getting to meet people through this group.
Fantastic. Great to have you here. My name's Denny Clark. I've been at St. Thomas since, I started attending worship there in the fall of 2011, right after I arrived here, accompanying my wife to her new job at Fort Benning. Within a year and a half, 2 years, sequestration took not only her job, but her whole program. And so we were stranded here, but we enjoy St. Thomas very much, and it's great to be dealing with the staff here and the whole congregation. So it's great to be with you here this evening. The journey group process it came out of a panic last fall, in which we had big plans for being able to resume activities, and then we had a new wave of COVID hit and prevented things from occurring, and we took that catastrophe in planning and turned it into something in which we were able to do things in small groups, do things online, and basically we by doing that, we ended up involving 2 to 3 times as many people as we had ever done on Wednesday evenings in terms of our adult formation program. And just so you know, we have, let's see, the last count I made this morning, we have 69 people involved in this round of journey groups. We also have another parish, St. Julian's Parish in Douglasville, that is tying in with us as well, and they have formed their own journey group. They're using our materials, so that pushes things to over 80 people that are involved in this process. I had announced that participants are the ones who control what goes on in these sessions, and as a result, I had requested questions in advance, and I'll share with you the list of questions that I received. There they are.
Not what I would have expected.
So y'all have your work to do. And with this, the being able to have a group share questions, particular issues that they're interested in pursuing, that's great. But this evening becomes kind of an exercise in what I sometimes did in college courses that I was teaching. We would have a stump the prof session in which there's no ability to do preparation, and people dealing with questions, concerns that they have, and being able to deal with whatever it is that they wish to cover, and we hope for the best results that we can. I suggest that you open up your chat window, which is at the bottom of the screen. You will see the chat button, and that's a spot where you can be adding certain questions if you just want to write something. But as we start this evening, I'm going to simply ask if there are burning issues from this past week, things that you thought were particularly helpful, things that puzzled you, things that shocked you, or just things that are kind of unsettling, that confused you as you went through. And we'll deal with whatever kind of questions you have in terms of that initially. And then I do have a screen with a variety of things that were covered during our first week, and with that, that may prompt a particular questions that we have as well. But are there particular things that you'd like to especially be addressing this evening as we?
Denny?
Yes,
David, in our session with our group, the overwhelming consensus was one of the key points that we got out of the first session, the first lessons, was it's not enough to believe in Jesus, you have to believe in what Jesus believed in. And having just completed the Gospels series, there's it's kind of a question of where's the best way to root out what Jesus believed in? Because the gospel writers treated it somewhat differently, as you've explained, because of their audience and their time in history and et cetera, and what their main point was, and the main thing. But what would your advice be to try to determine what was it exactly that Jesus believed?
Okay, let me flip that around and ask you how you know what people believe in. Now, there's a difference between believing in something and believing that such and such is true or correct or something. But if you were to meet a person, how would you know what that person believes in? And this is an open question to you all.
I guess it would be, what do they do?
What do they do? Okay, that's a very, very helpful kind of question. And when we talk about what people believe in, as opposed to the head stuff, the beliefs, the ideas that they have, we shift from that to what do they believe in? What do they entrust themselves to? What shapes how they live their lives? When we see that occurring, by far the easiest way of seeing that is to look at what they do. And I would say that's precisely how you deal with what Jesus believed in. What did Jesus do? And from his actions, we get a window into the core values that shape him. We come to understand what he means by God, what he means by Father. Those are all really crucial kinds of things, because as we look at what Jesus does, that really best conveys what he's committed to, what really shapes his life. And I would say, we know what Jesus believes in by watching those actions. And this whole business of actions, I'm going to be harping on that a good deal throughout the series. A lot of times within the church, there have been Christians who have been really, really paranoid about the issue of faith versus works. And somehow faith, was viewed as what is most important, and works, you aren't supposed to trust in those things. But that particular way of understanding things, first of all, relied on a really faulty understanding of what faith is. Faith is what you commit yourself to. In one of the videos from this week, in which Alan was talking about the person wheeling a wheelbarrow over a tightrope. Do you get in the wheelbarrow? Okay, what do you commit yourself to be doing? And that's where faith is. Okay, faith is not something that can be opposed to our actions. Faith gets expressed through our actions, and that that really is a kind of a bedrock principle that we need to look at. When we look at any kind of Bible passage, I keep reminding people that Bible passages were written in order to get people to do something. First of all, to do something. Secondly, they were written in order to get people to feel something in terms of attitude. I'm not talking about emotions here. I'm talking about the attitude with which they live their lives. So what they do, the kind of attitude they use in approaching life. And the third, and frankly, the least important thing is it's asking them to think something. But the doing, the feeling, having a particular attitude, those are really the key things. And a lot of times we just turn that whole thing upside down, and we assume that the Bible is primarily telling us about what we ought to think. And unfortunately, we usually stop there. That, the Bible is supposed to be giving us a series of beliefs, a set of correct things to say, a set of correct ideas to hold. And that probably isn't the best thing, because as we've looked in Gospels, as we are going to be looking at a good deal of the Old Testament, we're going to find that the Bible is quite tolerant of multiple different ways of thinking about things. But it's really quite consistent in talking about how you should function, about what you're supposed to do. And so that's the kind of thing that I generally approach that question with. Are there other kinds of ideas or arguments against that any of you would share?
Well, you have, I mean, it seems like I always heard they said it, you could be really good and do all the things that, that are taught, that, in the Bible, or that Jesus did. But if you didn't have this belief that, in Jesus, that it didn't matter, you wouldn't get into heaven. But you think, I mean, there's people of all faiths that have good actions that they do, there's, whether you be, which is something that always bothered me, because, I mean, people used to say you had to believe in Jesus to, and I thought about all the people all over the world, and that have different faiths. And so it's always been that didn't seem right to me as a child, that to think that you mean God's going to just destroy everybody. That didn't make sense,
Others.
Denny, and I think I've read different parts, or lots of parts of the Bible, but I can't say I'm a scholar. I know the stories, but I don't know the real scholarship behind it. But one of my favorite books has always been the letter of James. And I think it's looked down on by some people. But I mean, he says that faith without works is dead. And he says, he said, I'll show you my faith by my works, which is kind of what you're saying. And I've always liked that. And although I think some of the people who don't have works important say it's not a good book, but I've always liked that. And every morning I will read the daily lectionary readings, because the parts that I wouldn't have read otherwise. And we're reading 1 John right now, the first letter of John. And he's talking about love. And it's, if you don't put love into action, it's not love. So between that, which I'm not as familiar with, and James, that's kind of way I look at it.
Yes, in 1 John, underscores and makes the claim, the one who does not love does not know God. The one
Yeah,
who does not love does not know God.
he's pretty emphatic on that.
Absolutely. Without a doubt, he's emphatic on that. And no, there are many times that as I listen to certain other Christians, and I hear messages that aren't terribly loving. I think they've probably they could go down a list of beliefs, and they probably have their set of beliefs that are absolutely no different than the ones that I have. But what do they do with that? And that really becomes a crucial thing to that. A friend of mine, now deceased, and some of you may have read some of his materials, but Marcus Borg, who is a New Testament scholar, and here at St. Thomas a few years ago, there were a number of things by Marcus Borg that were read, and Borg, one of Borg's favorite stories was to talk about something that would almost always happen the first day of classes that he was teaching. And those of us who have been in college teaching situations can echo precisely what he described. He said at the end of class, there'd be this cluster of people around him, and they would say something like this. Say, I'm so glad to be in this class. I'm really looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to the course, but I want you to know that I don't believe in God. Yes, I've heard that many, many times. And Borg developed a great way of responding to those comments. He would say, tell me about the God you don't believe in. And that would always come as a shock to the students, and say, well, I don't believe that there's some guy with a white beard up in the sky with his finger poised over the smite button, ready to wipe people out the moment they get out of line. And Borg would say, I don't believe in that God either. And a person said, well, I don't believe a God who would condemn a person for who they love if it doesn't match my particular ideas of who we should love. And Borg would say, I don't believe in that God either. And he would go through this whole sequence in which a whole series of things would get mentioned, and person always bringing up something that, frankly, was not part of Borg's life as a Christian, and we find that this is a really constant kind of thing. To say I believe in God means absolutely nothing unless you tell me what kinds of values go with that understanding of God. Okay, is love a key thing in there? Is justice a key thing in there? Is building peace in there? The word God means nothing unless you fill that word out with the various values that are there. The various values that word God summarizes. And okay, that's the God in whom Jesus believed. Okay, the one who has a particular set of values. And you know that Jesus believed in that God because, oh, Jesus tried matching his actions to that. And you and I, that's precisely what we're called to do too. So that we become more God-like. We start matching what matters most. Okay, those things that that flesh out the meaning of what God means. Unless we're willing to deal with that and not just deal with this hollow container of the word God and say, oh, you ought to believe in God, regardless of what content you put in that, we're barking up the wrong tree at that point.
You know, also on that thing about what Jesus believed in, or having faith and belief in believing what Jesus said, not just believing in him. We cited the example in our journey group of when one of the Jesus walking on the water stories, he's walking across the water and Peter says, Lord, bid me come to you. And Jesus, well, come on. And so Peter starts walking on the water. And then he looks down and gets a little bit scared and falls down. But he really, for those first few steps, he believed Jesus. He believed that Jesus said, walk on the water and I can do it. And then he started having his little doubts. But that was a story we talked about a little bit in our journey group.
Mm-hmm. And that story, does a good job of emphasizing that kind of thing. But okay, the flip side of that, if I'm traveling somewhere and I'm running late, and there's this body of water between where I am and where I want to get to, I'm not about to head across the lake. And we need to underscore, is the purpose of that story that which the Gospel of Matthew and only the Gospel of Matthew tells, is the purpose of that story that people should push the limits and be able to say, hey, Jesus said, walk on the water, and by golly, I'm going to walk on the water. I always loved a response that Martin Luther is reported to have made to a number of people who are pointing out, but the Bible says, the Bible says, the Bible says. And Luther's response was, yes, but it wasn't talking to you at that moment. That you have to sort through, okay, what's being said to me, and what is part of the story world of that particular deal, which makes perfectly good sense in that story, but you can't just pluck that out and transplant it very, very smoothly to other kinds of situations. But no, this doesn't undercut the point that you're making at all, Para, that, hey, there's something important in terms of entrusting ourselves to what Jesus entrusted himself to. But there's also the issue of reflecting through, okay, in what situations does that apply? Every situation, every passage in the Bible is not intended to be applied in every single instance. the Bible provides kind of a smorgasbord, a cafeteria of things. The Bible contains this whole stack of books and a whole stack of stories within these books that were designed to help people in particular situations reflect on their relationship with God. And as we reflect on our relationship with God, some of those things really don't fit. Other things, hey, they're right on the money. And the process of spiritual wisdom is a matter of sorting through and not getting detracted by folks who say, but it says over here. Well, yeah, it does say that over there, but it just doesn't fit what it means to be faithful in this particular situation in which I find myself. So, the Bible never gets reduced to being just a formula that we can automatically apply. It's designed to make us think. It's designed to have us work through for ourselves. What does it mean for us to be faithful in this moment? And that's something that I think we'll see over and over again as we go through this journey group series.
One thing that is bothersome is something happened recently, and that is there's a leading national pastor who goes on TV every week, send me the money, we're doing great things. And then it turns out there's $600,000 cash hidden in a wall at the church. And it's like, I don't know what Jesus would be doing about that exactly, but anyway.
Oh, and
Those things really bother me.
and that it's right to be bothered by that, but the issue of stashing cash in the wall, that doesn't sound like something that is the wisest use of storing one's wealth either. And what this pastor, whether he knew about that or not, that's quite up in the air. So
Some of this conversation is reminding me of a conversation I've had by texting with a friend of mine that I've known through the Circles in Columbus program, which Meg Olive Allison's involved with. And it's, she was one of my circle leaders. And she's never really put her life together. She's still struggling. Right now, the 3 children that were still at home with her are staying with her sister. And she says, I just heard from her today, and she said she's almost homeless. I'm not sure what that means. And she doesn't have a job at the moment, and she's got lots of capabilities. But I said, why do you think that is? You have many capabilities. And she said, well, it might be because I am not vaccinated. And I said, well, you should get vaccinated. And then she said something, that she posted something that said, that she's not going to get vaccinated. God will take care of her. And I'm going, so I commented that he told you to get vaccinated. And then she wanted to know where in the Bible it says that. So of course it doesn't say that. But I said, God said your body is a holy temple. And when he created the world, he said we were to take good care of it. So there you go. That's where he said it. Go get vaccinated. But I don't think she has or will. So. And she is a great, she's a strong believer, but a little crazy too sometimes, I think.
Well, so say we all, but
no, I'm not saying that I'm immune from being crazy, but I'm
wondering if there are other kinds of issues from from your session this past week that you'd like to have us deal with this evening?
Denny, I'm sort of in and out of the picture here because I'm cooking supper at the same time.
That's fine.
But we really enjoyed Alan's videos. Can you give us some background on him?
Yes. Alan Story is a Methodist pastor from South Africa. He put together an intentionally inclusive, integrated community there, in which intentionally their congregation deliberately tries to be roughly 50-50 in terms of Blacks and whites within the congregation. He has been very, very involved in social justice kinds of issues. He has been quite prominent in terms of a teaching ministry, and you see his teaching ministry reflected quite strongly in these videos. Reverend Grace had been part of a workshop that he had led, and she was immensely impressed with him, and that's really where her awareness of this series of videos, which Alan Story did in connection, deliberate connection with Dan Erlander's book, Manna and Mercy. Dan Erlander is a Lutheran pastor, artist. His major in college was art. He reports that during college, during seminary, people always liked to sit next to him because the whole time any class was going on, he was drawing. And he would come up with all of these whimsical pictures and so on. And that really is a major gift for Dan. I knew Dan back when I was living in Idaho. Dan Erlander was one of the campus pastors at Pacific Lutheran University, and I had quite a bit of contact with him at that time. Erlander is a person who thinks in pictures, and he insists that he doesn't come up with an idea and then he illustrates that idea with his pictures, but instead he comes up with a picture and then he provides a caption to the picture. And basically, Manna and Mercy, the book, is his captions to his drawings. It's not the other way around. But Erlander and Story have had connections with one another, and Alan Story developed in collaboration this series of videos. During our series, we're only seeing a portion of the videos that Alan has made. I think there are about a dozen videos he has for just chapter 1 in Manna and Mercy, and we're stretching out chapter 1 over 3 sessions, partially so we can use about half of Story's videos, but as we deal with Story's videos, he's got a good sense of going for the heart of a particular concept. And we're also going to be meeting some individuals in some of his videos who basically express what he's talking about in their own lives, and that's a real plus, I think, with that. But I'm really delighted with how concisely he's able to deal with things. Those of you who know me know that conciseness is not a gift of mine. And so I greatly appreciate being able to see him do what I wish I could do.
Well, he got my attention on the one where he talked about the person, the father talked about his son dropping the Bible on the little girl. I think, where's this going? Where are we headed with this? But one thing I liked about and I mentioned the takeaway of it's not enough to believe in Jesus, we have to believe in what Jesus believed in. But the other was, would Jesus say amen to this? And Paula found that, an important takeaway.
Mm-hmm. One of the big differences that we as Christians have in approaching the Bible is that if we say that Jesus is the best clue we have for knowing what God is like, and the best clue for knowing what we human beings are supposed to become, then to have Jesus be the key lens through which we look at everything in the Bible is going to be very important. The Bible says some really horrible things at points. And it's important to acknowledge that. It's not something in which everything that's in the Bible, you're supposed to do that. Frankly, I spend a lot of time dealing with Muslims, and one of the standard Muslim complaints about the Bible is that there are all these stories that are absolutely so horrendous, and saying God certainly wouldn't put a story like that in for people to imitate, and they're right. The Bible tells us the story of people wrestling with what does it mean to be persons of faith in a particular situation. And we see the failures that occur there, as well as seeing successes that are there. And to use Jesus as the lens, and this nice deep little phrase, would Jesus say amen to this? Well, that's a very helpful way of being able to distinguish between the things that are really worthwhile for us to pick up from the biblical text, and other things that, well, at least at this moment, we may not find a whole lot of use for that. Doesn't mean that at some other point we might be able to find all sorts of relevance to that, but no, the using Jesus as the lens really goes a long way, I think, in terms of helping us sort through things. So often, many Christians will insist that it's an all or nothing kind of thing in terms of dealing with the Bible, and that's not the way the Bible was written. In Judaism, they have always understood that there are multiple points of view. In Judaism, this is a standard feature that they never get rid of the opposing viewpoint. They always kind of carry that along, because at some point, either as a negative example or as something that applies to a particular kind of situation, you can learn all sorts of useful things rather than excommunicating somebody who says something that you don't like. And I think that's just a really helpful kind of way of dealing with things. There are well, this coming week, we're going to push a bit further with the creation story. In week 3, we're going to be dealing with the problems in God's created world and why there are problems. And we're going to find that there are a lot of different ideas that are present in the biblical text. And we're going to see Erlander creatively express God pondering different alternatives. And Erlander is going to present God saying, well, I ought to do this. No, I can't do that. Well, I'm going to do this. No, I can't do that. And then selecting another way of going about things. And Erlander saying, hey, that's the story of the Bible that we're going to be following as we continue through. And when we get to that point, I'll spend some time in our Scenic Overlook sessions pointing out some of those places where Erlander is pulling certain thoughts of God and what the basis for his claiming those things to be as an option considered. And what Erlander is doing is looking at certain biblical passages that, yep, it really does say that, but nope, that's not the dominant theme that continues on through the Bible. And particularly the dominant theme that we end up seeing expressed most fully in the figure of Jesus. Anything else?
Well, I did have a question I brought up to the group and we just said, well, we didn't know. I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do. It's not important, I don't think. But it just in reading the passage from Genesis, it talks about God did this and it was good. He made the earth, he brought the animals. And then in verse 26, he says, then God said, let us make humankind. So who's he talking about when he says, let us?
That's been a major concern for a lot of folks. And there are a number of people who've been very creative of trying to take ideas that developed centuries after the time of Jesus and say, oh, what's going on here is talk about the Trinity. No, the doctrine of the Trinity was completely unknown to the folks who both wrote that passage and who heard it and who needed to make sense of it. That isn't what's going on. The best guess that we have is that there are numerous places in the Old Testament that talk about God and the heavenly court, the heavenly council. And later, as time went on, the heavenly court ultimately kind of morphed into the notion of angels who accompanied God. But the council of the gods, that was a common viewpoint in the ancient Near East. And In all likelihood, that's what was involved there. You'll find that that use of let us do such and such occurring there in Genesis 1. You'll also see it occurring later on in the Tower of Babel story as well. And the book of Job begins with a scene in the heavenly court, God chit-chatting with other members of the heavenly council, and it seems as if that's probably what was going on there. I don't think that.
Well, I thought it might have been as kind of something a storyteller would say.
Mhm.
It almost sounds like a children's story where you're saying, and then God said, let us, yeah, I mean, it sounded, and I thought about it, maybe that's just the way
Mhm.
it interpreted
Yeah.
it.
And that's a helpful kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
One of the most frequent other explanations for this is something that occurs very, very frequently in all sorts of material. If you remember back to Ronald Reagan, whenever he talked about himself, he always said we. We decided, well, that meant he decided. We brushed our teeth this morning. I brushed my teeth this morning. And this is often termed the plural of majesty. That for someone who is important, you talk about that person in plural form, and there are many examples of that. One of the things that fascinates me in the Quran is that Islam is absolutely adamant that God is one. The oneness of God is the most important principle within Islam. But very, very frequently in the Quran, whenever God is speaking, God says we. And the plural of majesty seems to be the best explanation there. That may very well be what's going on in the Genesis passage as well, dealing with. I mean, you've got in Genesis 1 this majestic story. And as we'll be looking at this coming week, looking at the context in which Genesis 1 was first written. The emphasis of God's majesty in that Genesis 1 creation story compared to the situation of the audience, or the situation of those who told the story and the situation of those who are listening to the story, is really an immense contrast. And that plural of majesty, dealing with how fully in control God is, that really is a very important part of that. And I look forward to perhaps next week having us come back to that idea and look at the situation of Genesis 1. And we very rarely do we ever talk about, what was going on in the society that wrote that story, or the society in which that story was written. And frankly,
wasn't a lot of it by word of mouth?
For this story, it's a very, very carefully constructed story. Yeah. And it both this week and the following week, we're going to talk about some of the ways in which the biblical authors here have very carefully put things together for dealing specifically with a particular point in time, namely around the year 550 BC. I mean, this is hundreds of years after the Exodus, hundreds of years after the time of King David. And it's occurring during the time of the Babylonian exile, absolutely the bleakest time in Israel's history, which also became the most creative theological period in Israel's life. And that people who were at the very bottom of the barrel and yet are able to come up with these majestic ideas, that's important. It was really during that period that the idea that there is one God, only one, who is over all things. It was only at that point that that we have that coming to the forefront. Back in the Ten Commandments, you shall have no other gods before me. Well, if you say that, then apparently other gods were considered a real possibility for people. But a few hundred years later, there just is no possibility whatsoever for talking about any other God. There is one. And that becomes a key part of the story. We're at the end of our time. You've shot a perfectly good evening.
It was a great way to spend the time.
Boy.
Thank you so much for being here. And next week we'll do this again. Hope to see you then.
Thank you, Denny.
Thank you.
Bye.